Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, Hooligan, shills, desolators, peasants, vassals, Iraqis, Kurds, Shiites, Sunnis. I'm Useful Idiot, and today we're going to talk about Iraq, because they are on the brink of what could turn into a civil war and a breakup. And let's go over the details first, and then we'll go over some background. So, 460 people have been killed so far in this Sunni Shiite violence in Iraq. And Iraqi forces in the north of Iraq are starting to desert, and Baghdad is having increasing difficulty controlling the region. So this is getting pretty interesting. And the Iraqi army is somewhat overwhelmed because they're having to deal with Sunni Arabs as well as Kurds. And relations between all three of those groups are not very good right now. Around the city of Kirkuk, Kurdish troops have actually advanced south to take over military positions abandoned by the army around the oil wells there. And it wasn't too long ago, maybe a month ago, and I even did a video on this, where there was tens of thousands of Kurdish and Iraqi forces facing off in that very region, and tensions about a conflict should the Kurdish forces move south or try to take over that oil region. Well, now the Iraqis have actually abandoned that area, and the Kurds have filled in, so obviously that standoff is over. And the most interesting part is the former Iraqi National Security Advisor said he was hearing Iraqi leaders talk seriously about partitioning the country. The first time that anybody's been talking seriously about that. One problem, of course, is there's no soft option, as they say. The war would have to occur. There'd probably be a bloodbath, and then the shifting dynamics between the Kurds, the Shias, and the Sunnis, particularly where they mix. So those areas would have to sort themselves out. So, and it's getting tense enough there that Baghdad has now called for a curfew in the entire Anbar province, Sunni province. So the Shiite government is really putting a shutdown on the Sunnis in that region. And then the other big story, of course, is media licenses have been withdrawn by the Baghdad government from Al Jazeera and other media outlets that they think are only helping to foment the violence there. And so interesting that we find ourselves in a situation where the government doesn't look that unlike the government that preceded it of Saddam Hussein, only the roles are switched now. So before it was the Sunni minority dominating and oppressing the Shiites, and now we have the Shiite majority in power oppressing and exploiting the Sunnis. And I'm sure they have old debts to settle, considering the Saddam Hussein and the Sunni Ba'athist government murdered thousands of Shiites after the United States' first Gulf War, when George Bush Sr. had promised the Shiites support should they rise up, and then they rose up, and George Bush did not give them support, and they were slaughtered by the thousands, and I'm sure they haven't forgotten that. It was at that same time that George Bush Sr., of course, helped the no-fly zone help protect the Kurdish region, which has flourished since then. But anyway, so now we have all this ethnic violence going on in Iraq, and we need to keep an eye on it, because this could escalate much further, and particularly because the tensions obviously have been brewing for quite some time. The most recent events started on showing up about December 2012, and the fact that there's massive desertions along ethnic lines in the Iraqi military is no surprise either. And this goes back to the fact that one of the biggest mistakes the United States made was disbanding the Iraqi military. I remember that moment well, thinking I must be hearing things wrong, because it was the most insane thing they could possibly do, was to disband the Iraqi military, throw 300,000 trained military men into the unemployment lines in Iraq. They were only asking for trouble, and we got it. But that would also have saved us all this heartache and all these problems since then. because the Army, if it had been left in place and all the units together, they would have been an efficient, trained force ready to deal with all these problems now. But instead, we started from scratch, and now they have an Iraqi army that won't even hold its own in the field against Kurds and Sunni rebels. So interesting situation there. And then obviously we have other bad actors involved in Iraq. The United States still has influence there, but we also have Iran, which has a lot of influence with the Maliki government in Baghdad, and then we also have the Saudis who are going to support the Sunnis in Iraq. So wouldn't it be ironic if the United States leaves Iraq only to have the Saudi Arabians finance another militancy and destabilization in Iraq like they've done throughout the Middle East? So interesting situation. So there we have it. We may end up having a civil war unfold in Iraq. And another reason why this should be obvious to everyone is, of course, these ethnic tensions have been there ever since they were unleashed with the United States invasion. And this is reflective of the fact, something I brought up in my videos, which is that countries like Libya and countries like Egypt and countries like Syria and countries like Iraq need a totalitarian strongman government, because it's the only thing that keeps these ethnic rivalries in check. But once that is removed, chaos reigns because the ethnic rivalries are no longer suppressed. And we're finding that throughout the entire Middle East and North Africa. And now that the United States is withdrawn from Iraq for more or less, these ethnic rivalries will continue to be a problem. And we'll see if they take a drastic step and create a Shia state, a Sunni state, and a Kurdish state. So there we have it. We may end up seeing a civil war and a breakup of Iraq, surprisingly. So too early to tell, but something worth keeping an eye on, because that'd be quite a dramatic development. And of course it ties in with one of my theories too, that at some point a free Kurdistan will be created. And now that we have a potentiality for this state to break away from Iraq if there's a civil war, and then we have the Kurdish region of Syria could be split off. Then we have the makings of the scenario that I think is a very distinct possibility. So Kurdistan has a lot to gain if there is an Iraqi civil war. So there we have it. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.